Let's face it, we have a professionalism problem. How many times have you seen a presentation where the person on camera looks like they're running it through a potato smeared in Vaseline? Webcams on laptops seem to be an excellent place to cut costs, so they continue to be absolute trash. And most of the bargain basement webcams are not much better. If you jump up a level, you might find a high resolution camera, but you're often still having to supplement it with better audio if you want to make a professional presentation. Working from home is not going anywhere, so it's important to make a good impression when you can. Even if you never stand in front of the person on the phone, they should be able to see who you are and that you are a professional in your field. I'm not saying you have to be on camera every day, but when you are, it should make a statement. I'm Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for GamingTrend.com. I am on camera, and today we're going to take a look at two cameras that aim to raise that professionalism level, the Insta360 Link 2 Pro and the Insta360 Link 2C Pro. More than just an iterative upgrade, these are looking to push the boundary between off-the-shelf, Best Buy cameras and ones that you'd expect in a completely professional environment. Just because that professional environment is inside your home doesn't mean it has to look that way. There are a number of use cases for both of these cameras, so let's unbox them and take a closer look. The engineering target for both of these cameras is pretty obvious. Raise the image quality, of course, but also provide next-generation AI-supported video tools that can make a virtual call just as effective as one in meet space. People tend to be visual learners, so engaging them with more than a head-on look for your face is almost always going to be more effective. After all, I'm keeping your attention by showing you more than just my face, right? You want to grab your audience's attention. Let's start with a look at that Insta360 Link 2C Pro. That's this one. This is the more compact, static design without the pan, tilt, zoom, 2-axis gimbal function of its larger brother for fixed position setups. Much of what you see on this larger unit, you're also going to find on this one, despite only a $50 difference. Though I suspect that when we're done, I'll have shown that the extra bit of cash to move up is worth the additional functionality, just in case you need it down the road. But I digress. I'm going to go over just the items that are unique to the Link 2C Pro, and then we'll circle back to its bigger brother to talk about all the things that they have in common. It's more than you'd think. So right now you're looking at the feed from the Insta360 Link 2C Pro, and as you can see, that's the stationary one. But it is shooting in 4K 30, and as you can see, it is remarkably clear. No adjustments have been made whatsoever. I've got a really challenging visual space here where it's shooting a bright blue behind me, and yet it doesn't wash out my face. You don't get that blue strangeness that you sometimes get with remote cameras, especially like a laptop camera. It's still remarkably clear on my face, and what you're hearing is the audio that comes through it. So in just a moment, we're going to switch over to the the Insta360 Link 2 Pro, the non-2C, and we'll show you what that looks like as well, and we'll also switch to that audio so you can hear the difference. But I do want to go over the different settings that you can see in the Insta360 Link controller software. So right now you can see we are not running HDR. We are running HDR, so that's nice and crisp and clear. The color looks really good. I didn't, again, make any adjustments whatsoever. If you wanted to make those adjustments, those are in here. Visual adjustments, you can, God help me, you can zoom in here. It is a digital zoom. That is way too close. But you can see it is remarkably clear. Even with a digital zoom, it is, again, the kind of zoom that you would expect out of something that would have a physical, sensor in it that can move. It's pulling off with an optical sensor, so that's very impressive. Under effects here, you can see that there are a number of color presets. You can also do okay, this might be being interfered with by me using OBS in the background here. Let me see if I can make that adjustment. There we go. All right, so now you can see I do have a blur effect behind me, so if you don't want that blur quite as intense, you can turn that up, or you can crank it all the way up, and you can see I don't get a whole lot of artifacting even at 100%, which is way too high. Sometimes you see where you can see there's some slight clipping around like the corners of my hair and stuff. Bokeh is not supported at 1080p, or at 4K, we'd have to flip back down to 1080p. just a second for it to snap back down. And now we'll be able to turn on bokeh. Bokeh is very similar to blur, but it's more of a natural look. It's the sort of thing that you would get with a different type of lens on a regular camera, but you can see all that flickering is gone. So it's much better, I think, than the blur effect. It's a more natural look. And again, you can adjust that intensity, and I'm moving around and you don't get that kind of flickering edge look. So it's far less distracting, but you're still getting that blur. You can see that at the higher end, you can see there's some pulsing in and out. So I don't recommend running it at 100%, but at somewhere around 60%, it seems to be very stable. So we're going to turn that off. You can do virtual backgrounds. You get into the same sort of situation where you've got the flickering, as you can see as I move around. And you can load your own. You can also load in moving ones. That actually makes the flickering effect worse. I have a Simpsons effect one that puts me behind the titular pink couch. But, you know, again, that's more for fun. Makeup. Here we go. Blush. Don't really see any blush. Fresh. Rose. Coral. Berry. Peach. Nobody needs to see any of that. My concern with all these beauty things is that it's fine and fun, but when they flicker or when they fail, it's going to be extraordinarily obvious. Just embrace your inner self. You know, nobody's perfect. So those kind of makeup options and things, I don't know. I've never seen them work remarkably well. And again, when it does flicker, it's very obvious. It's better to just... There are some filters here that you can use that are more around kind of... So daylight, vintage. You can see that the differences are very subtle. Vintage 2. Neon, which really accents that blue light behind me. Clear. And back to off, which is more of a natural look. I'm pretty impressed with what they've been able to pull off, because those don't really stick out the way that the makeup ones do. You can make some really subtle adjustments. It really will help with maybe a space that isn't so well lit. You don't get that weird blue effect that I mentioned, or worse, the yellow effect that you see sometimes with overhead lighting. Also included in this is auto framing, whiteboard, smart whiteboard, and desk view. We talked about those earlier with being able to look down at a desk or being able to focus on a whiteboard behind you. So I'm going to go ahead and skip past those. Under the More heading, you have the gesture controls, and we did mention these before. You can do like a hand up. That's going to do auto framing. You can do like this. It's going to enable whiteboard mode. This is going to be zoom mode. I have those turned off right now, so they're not doing the thing while I'm actually talking about it. Voice focus, if I were to move around the space, it would attempt to stay locked onto me. You're going to see more of that with the camera that has the pan tilt zoom than you will with this, but it will at least attempt, while you're inside the frame, to stay framed around that person. Music balance, you can see here it says turn off AI noise cancellation to preserve the original audio. If you're capturing audio that has any sort of musical sound to it, AI can pull certain tones out of it and really distort the audio. So being able to turn off that and just use music balance, it's really exactly what it sounds like. It's for music. Horizontal flip and vertical flip, depending on what you're doing with this, you may want to shoot it in a different mode for social media. You have that option here. Portrait resolution and high frame rate. Again, there are some very specific use cases when you would use this for action shots and stuff like that. But again, it's something that you would only use in very specific situations. enable low resolution. This would be when you're trying to preserve bandwidth. You know, you're doing a presentation and maybe you want it to look really good, but you also want to try and kind of split the difference, if you will. Maybe you're shooting at 4K, but it's going to kind of downsample it down, so you get a really crisp image, but maybe it's not quite at 4K resolution. That's going to give you that with that enable low resolution. You can see that right there. So that about covers this. You can enable all of these things and then pipe it directly to things like Zoom and Teams and that sort of thing. So you don't have to settle for bad video. You have the ability to have great video now with something like this, and it can simply clip to the top of your laptop or just sit on top of your monitor. It's very unobtrusive. So, you know, again, we don't have to have bad video and we can start to look professional like we should. So now I'm going to hit this drop down here and we're going to wake up the other camera. And now we're over here. So now we have the pan tilt zoom camera, and as you can see, it is tracking me. So when I move around, it's going to keep track of me and it's going to hone in on my voice. I do have the ability to adjust this. If I move in closer, it's going to obviously try and tilt up. It's going to try and keep me in frame. When I move further away, it tilted back down. So you can make adjustments. If you're like me and you like to do this during meetings, that can be very problematic. So maybe just be mindful of that when you have this enabled. I tend to pace. It's just part of my process. So just something to keep in mind. You do have some additional options in here that you didn't have with the other camera. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some of those. Zoom. So that should zoom in and out. I see it blinking. All right, doesn't seem to want to do that right now. I might be interfering with this because I'm actually recording it with OBS and I'm also displaying it in two places, so I might be messing with it somewhat. AI tracking, put the hand up. You do see a difference. So you can see it's no longer tracking me. I'm able to move around in the frame and it stays locked in position. I'm going to try and get it to zoom in. Pay attention. All right. I'm not going to worry about that. You can do that. I have gotten it to work. I've only gotten it to work when I wasn't using OBS. So I'm going to have to kind of tinker with that, but you're going to have to trust me on this. It does work. In here, you'll also see some additional options around smart adjustment. So what smart adjustment does is if you have multiple people in frame, it's going to attempt to reframe the image to show multiple people. So right now it's staying tight to my face, but if multiple people move into the space, it might pull further back out and allow that to be above them. Maybe I'm sitting and they're standing. It's going to want to reframe so it doesn't cut off their head. And it does that in a very intelligent way. It's pretty slick. Mute and privacy mode. Mute and privacy mode, what that does is when this camera is asleep, it will tilt down so the camera's pointed down. So you know it's not recording your face. And in addition to that, mute and privacy mode will also turn off the microphone so it's not capturing any audio. On the other camera, there's a small slider that you can use to close the aperture to make it in privacy mode. This one just simply points down, as I mentioned. The rest of the options are all the same there. Same thing with the effects. You have all the same effects here. The other adjustment is in this one here. So you have a pause track area, tracking speed, auto tracking, and tap the touch once to enter exit. So with this, you can use a draw system where you can basically draw around a certain area that you want to be able to track within. So maybe I only want to track from here to here. So I'm going to basically draw around that space and say, I only want you to track in those spaces. So if I walk off camera, I don't want the camera to continue to follow me. It'll only stay locked on me while I'm in that space. So it's really useful if you have a presenter and you only want to be able to look at the stage, then you would do that and it would stay locked in place, like I just set it to lock right now. Gotta love those gestures. So when I walk off, it doesn't track me anymore. And the next presenter comes in, and now I'm in the space that it wants to track. I would simply tell it to track me, and then we're back to tracking me as I move around. The other thing that's in here is presets. So you can set a number of presets where you can say, I want to be able to snap to 4 different positions, and I want to be able to do that very quickly. You would basically preset those, hence the name presets, ahead of time, and you would say, I want to be able to look at the whiteboard, then I want to be able to snap to a presenter that's over here, and then I want to be able to look up at something that's up there, and then I want to be able to snap back to the person's face. And you would define all those spaces and give people the marks that they need to stand in front of, so that way you can snap to those things. This is really useful in a multi-camera sort of situation where you have maybe presets on 2 or 3 different cameras, and you can jump between them. And while you're on camera 1, you can use camera 2 to snap to another preset, and then you don't get that jarring pull into position. It's simply in the right position, and you know that because you've predefined it. So that can be very useful. And then obviously the same zoom, but you also have the virtual joystick there. So if you need to make minor adjustments, maybe you're not quite on with your preset, maybe you set it to somebody who's 5'10" and you get somebody who's 6'4". Maybe I need to make a small adjustment on the fly. You've got that option. So again, this is the Insta360 Link controller software, and this particular one is for the Link 2 Pro. So now you've seen both of those cameras. There is one last aspect that I want to point out, and we talked about this when we did the review for the Insta360 Wave. So this is the Insta360 Wave, and we did that full review on that. It does have this sort of portion on top. The Link 2 Pro does have that same interface, so I can grab this camera that you're looking at, throw it on here, and now I have an audio solution and a video solution on the go, and I'm able to use this, throw it in position, and have a full audio-video conferencing system right in the middle of the table that can track everyone, but now with even better resolution and even better tracking. On paper, you might look at these 2 product sets and think there's not too much difference. They both shoot in 4K 30, right? Well, it's not the only difference between the Link 2 and the Link 2C Pro and Link 2 Pro. In fact, there are some significant improvements in these that might not immediately be obvious. If you shoot in low light conditions, these 2 cameras outperform this camera dramatically. If you're using the pan tilt zoom on this camera and you're doing voice control, it works significantly better. The generational difference between these 2 cameras cannot be overstated. The fact that we now have a lower cost option is even better. One of the things that I appreciate is that you have a complete upgrade system now. Maybe you bought the Link 2 Pro, but you started off with the Link 2. And you can see, I simply pop that off, pop the new one on, and I've just upgraded this entire platform. I still have all the capabilities of the Wave, but now I've just upgraded the camera quality, the tracking, the low light conditions, all the things that I just mentioned, and you can see that I didn't have to shed the entire platform to do that. So I can still keep this amazing audio conferencing solution planted in my conference rooms or using it for podcasts or whatever else, and I can upgrade the camera, and all I had to do was simply pop it off. So I appreciate that they've invested in their own ecosystem rather than saying, new hotness, throw the whole thing in the garbage, buy something completely new. So seeing Insta360 embrace that, I hope they continue to do that. I hope that at least they wring every bit of functionality out of this Wave system and continue to upgrade the cameras as they go until it's kind of reached its natural sunset, if you will. But in the meantime, I am appreciative that I can simply pop this off and change it to whatever's next. The last up on any of our reviews is always price and warranty. I'm glad to say that Insta360 continues to stand behind their products. All Insta360 products, not just these, have a 1-year warranty, and they're all eligible for Insta360 Care. That's an aftermarket add-on, if you will, that allows you to extend the warranty an additional 2 years. So that's going to allow you to do multiple replacements. The longer you run that warranty, the more replacements you're eligible for. So if you happen to be very hard on your Insta360 gear, you would simply extend that out further so you're eligible for more replacements. I have to say, as somebody who's owned Insta360 products for a long time now, I've never actually swapped one. The only thing I can remember actually swapping on my Insta360 camera was, I had a little bubble shield that was on the 360 camera that I accidentally dropped and cracked that little bubble case, swapped that bubble case, and that's the only thing that was my fault. So that isn't even a mechanical failure. So At least you have a little bit of peace of mind that these are well built, despite how incredibly tiny they are. But if something were to go wrong, you do have options. The other portion is price. So the Insta360 2C Pro is going to come in at $149, and the Insta360 Link 2 Pro is coming in at $199. So you look at the visual quality that you're getting out of a higher end camera, and yeah, you're going to pay a little bit extra for it, but you will look professional. You will look well lit. Your color will be correct. You will look like you are shot with a decent camera. There's no need for you to be that shaky cam, 14 frames per second, awful laptop camera that you've been using the whole time you've been working home since COVID. So now you can actually look the part when you stand up and do a presentation. You can feel free to jump on camera, look your best, and know that this is going to give you an amazing presentation. And if you are the type that has to present and you need to use a whiteboard camera, you now have a camera that's going to properly track that. So let me know in the comments. Do you still work from home? Do you use any sort of aftermarket camera system? If so, which one? Would you be interested in something like this that's going to give you an amazing presentation? Or are you just going to keep working with that awful laptop? I'm Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for GamingTrend.com. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you got something useful out of this. Stay safe out there. We'll see you on the next one.